Are we live?
I believe
We're
we're
live.
live.
Does it say live? I've
You'd
forgotten
think
where it actually says live.
after all of these attempts, we'd know when we were live.
Yeah. Okay, top left corner, it says live.
There we
And it
go.
also says that we've been going for 20 seconds. So, hello everyone, and welcome to the Freelance episode
Evening,
21.
everyone.
How are you doing, Nick? You
Yeah,
doing okay?
yeah. It's October, which means that it feels like there's a long time before anything happens, but that always feels
Yeah,
kind of false because there's almost certainly lots of things going on over the winter
absolutely.
that you just don't think about because you've been so focused on, oh well, there's this and then this and then this and then this and I've got to sort this and so on. So yeah.
Yeah.
How about you?
I'm beginning to think about my list of things that I want to get done.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, what I want to do, plans. Um,
Yep. I
and
have my winter projects list
yeah,
already, like 8 or 9 things on it.
yeah, and yeah, that's quite exciting actually. I'm pretty excited about all of that.
Yeah.
The what else? Yeah, I've also I've experienced um, because now I know LARPers.
Mm.
Sometimes there are actual winter events that you can go
Yeah.
to. So
I,
like
I,
there's
you go. Sorry.
availability. There's availability. There are possibilities, but I don't know whether it will come to anything this year. But maybe I'll go somewhere during the off season because
Yeah.
yeah,
Bit of a misnomer these days, right?
yeah, exactly. Everyone's
Yeah.
very
Yeah. I mean, we'll
yeah,
talk about it more when we get onto like thinking about any events or anything that we want to talk about. But I managed to already book myself onto something, so
great, good. Um, so we've got a few people in the chat already. Do say hello. If you can hear us, it is helpful to know. Obviously, Nick and I can hear each other. Hopefully, you guys can as well.
yes.
Um, yeah. So, Nick, it's been a month,
It
and
has been a month. September was definitely a month.
it was a month. And as a teacher, it was a month. But as a reenactor and a LARPer, what projects have you been up to since we last spoke?
So we spoke at the beginning of September. So uh, we, my brain just completely short circuited there. That's a
Mm.
good start, isn't it?
Tell you what, I'll give you an opportunity to think. I have been working on a drinking horn. That
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah, it's an ox horn that actually was bought as a dog's chew toy, uh, and I've just been sanding it and sanding it and sanding it, um, and hopefully you can see when it's finished, it will be a black horn with I've got a brass end to it, and I will use this as a larper um, as a cup because I kept on forgetting to bring my cup places because yeah,
Yeah. Is that one of Todd's dagger sword shapes that you're putting on the end of it?
this is a cheaper one.
Ah, okay.
So the Napoleonics reenactments um,
Right. Yep.
have similar shapes,
Yep.
and they because it's part of the uniform, they get them mass produced and they're really cheap. So yeah, needs a bit of work. It needs a bit of hammering and fitting to get it fitting right. But yeah, that's the plan. So that's one project I've been doing. I've also finished a spalder, which was a commission. I've sent that off, and I've finished uh, the right leg of a pair of leather creases. That is another commission. So I need to finish off the left one as well. And you'll be thrilled to know, Nick, that they're blue, which
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, I
Do
know
like a
you
bit of
like
blue
blue.
leather. Is that a like a light blue or like a very dark, intense blue?
I don't know. If...
It's loud, apparently. Um,
Yeah. So I've gone
ah,
for a bit of a fade into the middle. So it's lighter blue in the middle and darker blue around the edge. Um, and it's actually leather with steel plates on the inside. And just to make sure that people don't get upset about um, it being heavy armor, I've embossed the plates
I
on the.
really like that embossing. I think that looks really good.
So yeah, and that's an interesting thing about designing armor for a game is um, making it easy, thinking about the rules of the game and the playability of it, right? Because
Yeah,
you don't want someone to be going, "Oh, he's not taking his hits," because they think he's wearing leather armor when actually, he's wearing the steel underneath. So yeah,
yeah, yeah. And it's I mean, I know that it was before I started playing a few years before. There had been a kind of cycle of development in the game rules to accommodate the fact that lots of people were wearing kind of brigandine style armor, which
yeah,
obviously doesn't always look like it's metal, but can assure you it definitely weighs significant
weighs
amount
the
and is
same. Yeah,
definitely metal. Um,
yeah,
so yes, that's part of it. And like the bottom line, like you just don't want to have to spend your time when you should be playing the game explaining to it like to a referee how
yeah,
your armor meets the rules.
yeah, sure. And I think that brigandines are well known for that now,
Yeah.
and certainly in Empire they're common enough that people understand that. But
Mm.
I just did have a concern that um, I wanted it to read the aesthetic look for Wintermark is leather,
Yes.
but I also wanted it to be clear that it wasn't just leather.
Yeah. It
Um,
was, yeah.
in the
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, hopefully I'll get that finished in a short while and send that off.
Mm. Mm.
And yeah, then I can start thinking about other projects for the winter. So yeah,
Yeah.
what? So have has your memory been sparked, or is it?
I did a couple of like a selection of kind of fizz reps for Empire in the run up to it. Um, some kind of some more potion fizz reps and this kind of thing, and kind of I did a sort of bunch of maintenance projects, like made sure that my boots were all leathered, like checked all of the straps on things. I had to replace the strap on my male standard, like those kinds of little bits and pieces that normally, ideally, I would leave until the winter, but they
Yeah,
kind of had to be done because I needed to use them, kind of thing.
yeah,
And then
sure.
I've just been putting together my list of jobs for the off season, which are a mixture of kind of Empire specific things and projects that I've put off this year. Like I never got round to making myself my soldier's coat that I really wanted to make before the season
Yeah,
started. Hopefully, I'll get that done this winter. I am at the point where I might need to make or commission a new pair of hose. I have the fabric for it. It's just a case of like
oh,
either getting somebody to make it or having a go
forgot about that.
myself.
Yeah,
Um,
we both had hose emergencies the same weekend, didn't we?
yes,
I'm gonna have to put that on my list as well. Forgotten
yeah.
about that completely.
Um, so yeah,
Yep. And YJ says hello in the chat. Hello.
Jane.
Hopefully one person can hear us.
Yeah,
Good to have
I'm,
you.
I'm glad we've got a person that can hear us.
Yep.
Um,
Um yeah. And yeah, I've got a load of projects that I want to do, but most of them are still in the thinking about it phase, or the research phase. So have you been up to any research recently, Nick? Or
I haven't, but a friend kindly lent me a couple of really cool looking books that I'm super interested in. I've got a jousts and tournaments book and the Royal Book of Horsemanship, Jousting, and Knightly Combat. Both were limited run books from a print shop, I think in the US, Chivalry Bookshelf. And yeah, I'm super keen to dig into them. I haven't yet. Life has been very busy, but I'm very grateful
Yeah,
that I was lent them. So yeah, I hope I might be able to have a report back on at least some of the content of them next month.
brilliant. Look
How
forward to
about
that.
you?
I've been getting really interested in Anglo-Saxon helmets.
I'm shocked.
Um, so Anglo-Saxon helmets are an interesting bunch of finds because there aren't very many of them. For kind of 500 years, 400, 500 years, I think we have 6 helmets found in England. Um, and it's interesting. A lot of the research and a lot of the experts seem to say that this suggests that they weren't very much used and that only the richest people had helmets. Um, but I'm not entirely sure that that's true because I know from the 15th century how many English armors we have when we know that there were thousands,
Mm,
or at least from the 15th century, 100 years, we know that there were thousands of English style armors made within England, and we have none of them left. And that's a good 1,000 years after the start of the Anglo-Saxon period. So, um, yeah, there's kind of this prevailing thought that that is because the helmets weren't very much used by Anglo-Saxons,
mm,
despite the fact they're mentioned a lot in Beowulf, despite the fact that the Romans beforehand basically like it was standard issue to have a helmet. If you look on the Bayeux Tapestry, if anyone's at the end of that period, if anyone's got any item of clothing, they have any item of armor, they have a helmet.
yeah.
It just strikes me as this kind of uh, yeah, an interesting, weird kind of thing where it's a received knowledge. It's based on it's based on evidence, but having come into researching that period of history, um, having been in looking at other periods of history, I'm looking at going 6 helmets. That would be awesome if we had
Mm,
uh, six bona fide English salads.
yeah. That'd be
We'd be
mental.
really happy. Yeah, but we
Yeah.
do. We don't. So um, yeah, I think sometimes that can be a lesson to us to look at our, and sometimes it takes going to another period or researching something different to your norm to
Mm,
learn a lesson about your own um, period and go, actually, there's this received knowledge based on evidence, based on an assumption on that evidence. But when you look at it compared to other things, actually, um, it's not that weird to have a very small number of surviving artifacts from a huge original pool. So yeah,
yeah. I wonder if as well, like it's kind of not survivorship bias, but like we have a lot of swords from cultures where swords were important items, they were status symbols.
yeah,
And I wonder if like the lack of things like helmets is because they're not.
yeah. And the ones that we do have are really nice.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
You're not going to recycle a sword if it's a status symbol, but
yeah,
breaking down a helmet, using the metal to make other armor,
yeah,
we know that
absolutely.
that happened between kind of the end of what we would call the medieval period into the early modern period, cutting up cuirasses
Mm,
and things to make jacks of plates and all of these sorts of things. So,
yeah,
maybe there's an element to that to say that no, helmets weren't a status symbol. That's why we don't have many of them, because they just got churned into something new.
yeah. And where the differences weren't huge, you could see that happening even more, right?
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
can actually, we have 16th century breastplates
Mm.
that were very clearly modified within the working life, um, because the new style was only slightly different, and so they did those modifications. Um, yeah. Anyway, it's really interesting. I love the Anglo-Saxon helmets. It's given me some ideas for making some more LARP armor, and investigating how to do that. So yeah. Plus, it's also feeding into. Pardon me. It's also feeding into my next project, which we talked about last week on the stream,
Yes.
which is hopefully to start reenacting all over again.
Yep.
Um, so I'm hoping to go to Hastings, which is next weekend, and view the Battle of Hastings as a member of the public, and then over the course of the year, research and build a 11th century kit so that I can take part in the following year's reenactment. So yeah, the research that I'm currently doing on Anglo-Saxon helmets helps in both of those fields, both the LARP field and the Hastings prep. So
That's great.
yeah, yes, it's all very exciting. And events. Did you have any events? I think you did. I think you had one.
Yes, yeah, I was supposed to have two. Unfortunately, one of them had to go on the back burner because of family things, but
Yeah.
these things happen. I had Empire earlier in September. That was a definite eventy event. There's lots of quite intense role play on the Friday evening for our group, which you know was a very different experience and that sort of thing. And then a very busy weekend for us. And left us also with a lot of kind of practical learning points because say we've been running this bar, lighting continues to be a problem for us. What do we do when people turn up without cups? All of these sorts of things. What
Yeah.
does it mean to take a reservation? How do we run those? Everything like that is a thing that needs to be worked on from like a personal perspective, like figuring out what I want my character to do over the next year because I've got a whole set of months to prepare for that. But it was a good event. It was a very good event. Still got home at
Great.
a reasonable time, even though there was an awful lot for us to tear down. So that was great. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to next year. And then obviously we've got winter markets coming up, and also I have booked to play Company of the Garter at the end of January, which is going to be a much smaller LARP taking place like in a building, like there's building to sleep in,
Mm,
rooms for encounters and all of this sort of thing. So it's going to be very different, and I'm excited about it.
great. I look forward to seeing the photos of that after it's done because there were some great ones from last year's, I think.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, good. Yeah, I've not done any events since last time. I am hoping to get along to the markets in November. I think they are,
yeah,
um, to help me stock up on various bits and bobs that I need for the projects that I'm going to be doing. But yeah,
yeah. I
um,
need to review or find the brief for Garter to find out if I need to make a new livery.
yes, yeah, yeah, good. So all of that being said, we're now at the main part of tonight's discussion. So before we jump into that, we've got to say a we've got to do a call to action. Don't
Yep.
forget to like, share, and subscribe. Big thanks to my patrons who the night level patrons names are going along the bottom of the screen now. And really excitingly, uh, and I'm a little bit nervous about this, but basically the 11th century kit that I'm going to be putting together, the reenactment kit, is going to be done on a budget, and the budget is going to be my Patreon money.
Wow.
That's that's it. So what that means is the Patreons are going to choose what
Hmm.
I am doing. So if the Patreons decide that I'm a Saxon, then I'm a Saxon. If the Patreons decide I'm a Norman, then I'm going to be a Norman. And all of those choices that one might be making as a reenactor,
Yeah.
I'm going to leave that up to them. So I'm excited for that. It's a little bit nerve wracking but I'm sure it'll be fun. I think it will be really fun. So um, if anyone wants to be a part of that, you can find the link to my Patreon in the description down below, and hopefully we'll have a really great fun year out of it.
Yeah.
So the tier list.
I'm excited because I've not seen any of this.
Yeah.
I'm going in
So
completely calm. I'm
yeah.
just going to be
So
firing off opinions without thinking them through. It's going to be brilliant.
great. So a couple of days ago, I put up a post asking for people's suggestions. We got a few suggestions, and we're trying to keep these a bit shorter these evenings. So I've not put in loads of armor,
Okay.
but we've got a good 7 armors, which should give us a decent discussion for the next 40 minutes or so. I should think.
Well, and I will say I did do some pre-thinking because there was an armor that I was expecting to see here, just so I could rip some like contentious opinions. So
Okay, so I I don't know which armor it is that you're thinking about, but I think I know which armor I'm going to start with,
Mhm.
and that is King Theoden's armor. Theoden. Sorry, people don't like the way that I pronounce Theoden. You know, when you read a book when you're really young, and you just that pronunciation that was in your head is just the pronunciation from now on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Theoden's armor is just it's S tier. Um, I will. There are no notes on that. Um, I don't
So
think
my
anyone will
one
complain.
my thing that always comes back to me about this armor is it just looks too rigid.
Mm-hmm.
It
Go on.
has that look of some of those 16th century armors that aren't they don't give you the same flexibility in the upper body that some of earlier armors which have a separate upper and lower
Sure. Yeah.
and so while this is a exceptionally good looking armor, it does just have that bit to me that says that like this armor is not perfect. There is more that could have
Yeah.
been done here, and that's not a criticism of the designer and the metalworker who made this, because the whole of the like Rohan armor, like all of the armors in the Lord of the Rings films are like internally consistent. They make sense, but
Yep.
I'm just always reminded of seeing Theoden on horseback and him looking like he's fighting to stay leaning forward
Yeah.
because of the length in the torso.
Yeah. I think a certain amount of that was actually Bernard Hill. He admitted that he wasn't the best rider,
That's fair.
um, and one of the big one of the big issues that we have in riding in armor is getting your position in the saddle right.
Mm,
It is very tricky. So I think part of it is that I do agree to a certain extent. I think the interesting thing about the armors from the Lord of the Rings is that they are obviously historically inspired, but they're also designed to a modern aesthetic.
yes.
So if you or I were designing this armor to a medieval aesthetic, we'd probably put the waist about 3 inches higher.
Yes.
We'd probably slim down the pauldrons quite a lot because they don't need to be that big. Um, and we'd probably reduce the length of the scale, um,
The skirt.
the scale skirt, because it goes down way beyond his greaves, and it's it's unnecessary weight, right?
Yeah.
Um, but from a modern aesthetic point of view, it looks really cool.
Mm,
Um, because that is the modern idea of what a soldier or a fighter should look like. They should be heavy in the shoulders, and they shouldn't have a narrow waist the way that the medieval aesthetic goes for. So yeah, um, I'm still going to leave it an S tier, but I agree. It isn't actually perfect. But, no, okay, we'll get into trouble if we do that because we got into trouble about the Morion, didn't we? So I am going to move it down. I'm putting it A tier, okay, and that's as low as we're
Wow.
going. Is that all right?
Do you know what? I genuinely, I wasn't trying to convince you to drop it a tier, but I don't think it can go. Like, if there was another S tier that I was just like pitching that there could be an armor that is better than this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um. So we have got another armor now. So this armor was oh, where are we? Oh, there was meant to be another armor in here.
What are we looking for?
Leonidas Sparta asked us to do the Uruk-hai armor. Let's just
Oh.
talk about the Uruk-hai armor because that's incredibly different from Theoden's. What were your thoughts on the
Well,
Lord of the Rings Uruk-hai armor?
it's interesting that you'd say that because I think that the Uruk-hai armor has like similar criticisms that I make of the Theoden armor. That it has that almost a one size category, but for the Uruk-hai, I think that works and that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, it's clearly like a B tier armor because that it's like mass produced generic armor that you're handing out to essentially disposable infantry.
Yeah.
For me, but like on an aesthetic perspective, like it hits everything you want from it, and it makes a lot of sense as well for the kind of infantry that are being portrayed there, right? Like it's very heavy in the chest and shoulders and face, which is all of the stuff that's forward, right?
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of armor on the legs, but that's because they're moving on the battlefield, maneuverability, even though they're like very heavy marching, grinding infantry. They don't need that leg armor because they're protected by a large body of people. In fact, the only criticism or one of the few criticisms I would make of the Uruk-hai armor is for a lot of the time they don't need the shields that they're equipped with because they're wearing heavy armor already.
Yep.
But that's a very common movie conceit, is to have plate armor with a shield over it for like large volumes of foot infantry.
Yeah. I think that the Uruk-hai shields give it without looking like Greek or Roman armor. Like it doesn't. You don't look at it and think that's a Greek or that's a Roman, but it has all of those vibes. And part of that, I think, is just which pieces of armor they're using, right?
Yeah.
And so, in order to give that vibe, I think the shield is quite important.
Yeah.
But then they go away from that and make it more brutal with the shaping of the shield, and it's kind of like it does kind of make you think of the Roman legions without making you think of the Roman legions.
A grinding advance.
Yeah, so you
Endless
get how they fight. You get what it's about. It's about an empire with one guy at the top, and these are just the foot troops, but they're really well equipped. But like not in an expensive way. They're well equipped to do the job, and that's it. And the armor screams that. I I think it's really cool armor. I would match a different shield with that kind of armor probably because their shields have a kind of a Taj construction where it's strapped to the shield and it's like a punch shield, isn't it?
Yes.
Strapped to the forearm. But the actual place where they are vulnerable is their thighs. That's the only part that they haven't armored. Is the it's the biceps and the thighs. So something like a center boss shield or something
Yeah,
like that.
Skeeter.
Um, or a like the Greek hoplite shields that kind of are bigger and cover that wider area,
Yeah,
would work well for that. But and then you could kind of say that those are the front rank, just the front rank have those shields, and then you got the pikes behind, and that would make a load of sense. But I know they wanted the brutality
yeah.
of the punch shield. Vitellius says that the King Theoden armor reminds them of the Anima armors from the 16th century, um, and said that they thought they were even more flexible. Um, I think they were. I'm not 100% sure um, how usable they were and how effective it was, because we only see them for a really short period of time, and then they kind of and then people invent a placard to go over the top of them, for when you're being used as heavy cavalry, and then they just go away entirely. So I think they were trying to solve a problem that they didn't solve effectively. Um, but I'm happy to be wrong. I've never worn one, so I don't know. I do know it's very similar in many ways to the Polish winged hussar armor. Oh, Vitellius has just said that as well.
Hmm.
Yeah. Um, but if you have a look at the proportions of Theoden's armor compared to the winged hussar armor, it is longer in the torso. Um, so yeah, the issues that we talked about would be there in that the lower part of the breastplate I think is very close to his hips,
Yeah.
um, rather than the actual natural waist. But it's still really cool armor. So now we are going to move on because we had Uruk-hai. Then we have Stephen Curtin asked for the elves from the last alliance of elves and men in the Fellowship of the Ring.
All right.
So this, I mean, that armor. Can I zoom in?
Oh, well, I'm just trying to find a picture for me to just double check what I'm remembering of this armor. I remember
Oh,
exquisite shields.
yeah, gorgeous shields. Um, you've got the helmets are kind of like a Corinthian barboot style with a crest, high bladed
Yeah.
crest in the middle. You've got the armor panels are kind of woven together.
Yes.
Uh, yeah, this was the coolest armor when I saw it. Uh, when I looked at it first time, and I still remember sitting in the cinema and seeing that line of elves do the
Oh,
spinny
the
swordy
uppercut.
thing. Yeah, and it was the coolest thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And for a long time, I very much dreamt of having this armor. Um,
I I very much like the cutout for spear use on the large shields.
mhm,
And I think my main so this armor is really well designed from a narrative point of view to kind of put across like the grace and craftsmanship of
mm,
the elves. Um, and I think it's like lovely from that perspective. But one of the things that I my criticism of it is it's not individual enough. Now I know that the scenes that we see this in, like you don't get a chance to examine any individuality here,
yeah,
but I feel like you've got these elves who are fantastically long-lived individuals, and they
yeah,
all have this armor that is just like incredibly finely wrought, and like so I feel like it all should have been individual in a way that you see much more in like the Rohan armor,
yeah,
and this kind of thing. Um,
yeah,
so I would have liked to have seen just something to make this armor stand out as like unique per warrior. I mean, I think it's a fantastic armor. I think it's like an A tier armor. Um, it hits a lot of those things that you were talking about the Uruk-hai, but kind of more, right? The places that they don't armor, like the gap between the spauldre and the vambrace, the kind of gap between the plates on the thighs, which is covered by the hanging scale. These sorts of things are covered by that larger shield in a lot of
Yeah.
cases.
Yeah. I
And I
think
also particularly enjoyed archers being armored.
yes, armored
I think that,
archers
yeah,
being used as a second rank behind the
yeah,
spearmen.
yeah,
Um, yeah, I I would still choose to wear this armor. Like
yes,
if you offered me any of the Lord of the Rings armors, I would definitely this would be one that I would choose for sure. Um, like you said, it ticks all the boxes. One thing I can't really think of something that I would improve it with, except for maybe articulated elbows and articulated knees.
yeah,
Um, but that was a time constraint and a budgetary constraint that they just couldn't work with on the films. Is that it was just too much work. They had
yeah,
too many armors to make. That was a choice they weren't going to do. And to be fair, articulated elbows and articulated knees have only been used for a ridiculously small amount of time compared to the history of armor, right? So,
true,
um, and in only a very small geographical point. So, many cultures have dealt with it um, without problem. I think a big issue in all fantasy films. I think if we were to look at any of these, all fantasy films, all fantasy video games, is that everyone is far too uniform, and I think that's what you were saying.
yeah,
It even comes down to right, they're all wearing the same colors. Like
yeah,
you could definitely have had some mix up of some kind to these guys,
mm,
but they decided against it, which does make it read well in the film, but from a reality point of view, that kind of a culture would not
yeah,
want that uniformity. I'm going to put this as A tier.
yeah.
Um, or does it go S tier? They do all have a floor length cloak, which I feel is very simple.
Horrendous fighting.
Yeah, I mean, I know they're elves and all that, but I, I think that would be
Elven
the one
cloth.
thing that keeps it out of
Yeah,
S tier, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, cool. Okay, um, let's carry on up the list. We're doing all right. We've got 20 minutes left. Um, so, I couldn't download one of these. We've had several requests of the Nilfgaardian armor from The Witcher, and
Oh God, which one?
I
From the video game or from the show?
both, but I couldn't get a photo of the right size in the time that I had available. Um, from the video game, it's fine. It's basically just it's not even fantasy armor; it's
No.
gothic armor. And from the show, it's appalling. And I don't know that I want that photo on my computer. I think,
The Salets aren't bad.
but even the Salets, they've got those
Mm.
like veins going across them, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, but that's like that's an aesthetic choice, right?
I
Like in
I
terms of
it
like the shaping of the Salet is very, very clearly just a visorless Salet that
yeah
has been mass produced, which I think works for like
yeah
infantrymen of or infantry troops of an army on a show. Like the veining and like the tree effects, like
yeah
that's an awful lot of opportunity for a sword or other weapon to catch in and not slide off the curves that are clearly there to help things slide off. Unless it's
Yeah.
like Play-Doh, in which case, that's kind of funny.
To me, it looked like someone had the the fluting on German armor explained to them, but they had never seen a German armor before,
Mm.
and they then tried to create an armor based on that explanation.
See,
um,
I hadn't even considered that this was an attempt at fluting.
I just don't understand why you would do that otherwise.
I will say that there appears to be a different version in a later season or a different show
Yes,
or something that looks significantly better.
the basically in season one it became a meme, and season two they actually it was like the main change that they made was
Ah.
the Nilfgaardian armor. Um, yeah, obviously someone got told off.
Maybe that's why, because I don't remember that the ribbed armor at all. Like it doesn't stick in my brain until I looked at these pictures now. Um, so yeah, there's a thing.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. So we'll say yes. We'll take uh, the game one and the season two armor, but it's not really fantasy. It's just
I'll shove it in B tier. It's fine if we had
B
a
tier
picture.
if we had a picture of it. And the other stuff we'll put in D. I would only wear it if it was literally life and death. And yeah.
Hmm.
Um, okay. Next, we've got Steve Marshall gave quite a few suggestions, so I've taken two of them. One is the Githyanki half plate from Baldur's Gate 3, which is
Okay.
this one. I had to search this because I'm not a computer games person. So this is the Githyanki half plate. Gith Githyanki?
Yeah,
Am I
Githyanki.
okay?
Yeah,
You played it, yeah.
plane of travelers.
Okay. So
I mean,
um,
it's Toby Capwell's fantasy armor.
yeah, yeah.
As far as
This
just looking at the pictures on my screen, it looks like the hero armor that Toby had made with slightly less lamination.
yeah.
It's got that
It
like
did,
upper torso with the sort of softer midsection for flexibility.
yeah,
I like it.
yeah. The pauldrons aren't ridiculously big, which you often get with this kind of fantasy armor,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I love
Uh,
the scale hangings for the armpit guards.
mhm. And
Uh,
it doesn't leave the um, the abdomen completely unprotected, which you often get with this sort of thing.
yeah,
Is that they'll do plate in a certain area and then nothing else
yeah,
next to it, and whereas this actually um, it says right, I've got to move here, but I'm going to put some scale there,
yeah.
which I think is a really good choice for that. Yeah, I'd wear it.
I like this armor. I think this is an A tier armor as well. Like
Yeah,
this is well designed. This is above average in terms of protection. There's clearly artistic license been taken here
yeah,
by to like make it fancier, but I think it's good. I like
yeah.
it.
And you can see that like if you just took away um, the decorations, it would still be a functional armor that you would go, yeah, okay,
Yeah,
I'd wear that.
absolutely.
Great. Okay. We've now got three armors in A tier.
Well,
Uh, so, I mean, actually, the examples have all been pretty good so far. Um, Now we've got, again, this is from Steve Marshall, the Kingsguard armor from Game of Thrones. I actually decided to go for the Kingsguard armor from House of the Dragon. Why did I decide to do that? I hear you ask. Let me remind myself. Okay, yes, I did that because the Kingsguard armor from Game of Thrones is basically a breastplate with a. It's very very similar to the Elven armor in in
Mm.
many respects. So the Kingsguard armor from House of the Dragon, however, is similar to the Elven armor in other ways, but it's also not as good. So
Oh Lord.
yeah, so this has a big problem, um, in that it goes far too far down, and this is what we were talking about with the Theoden armor, but with um, bigger um, bigger problems. Right, is that it's working to a modern aesthetic without making compromises of that, and not realizing that the medieval aesthetic was that way because it worked.
So this is an armor that is worn with apparently without leg protection, as far as I can tell,
Yep.
with no shield
Um, it doesn't appear to have a shield.
and no pole arm.
No. And it's um these things, like, there were loads of people throughout history who wore armor without leg protection
Yes.
and who wore armor without complete arm protection. Those people pretty much always had large shields
Or long poles.
or long polearms,
Or
uh,
bows.
or bows. This is armor that is meant for someone who's meant to be up close and personal, and it leaves the thighs mostly unprotected, um, the biceps mostly unprotected, the legs mostly unprotected, uh,
Those
and it's
helmets
meant
aren't
to
good
be the
either.
elite armor of Game of Thrones, right? It's the King's Guard, um,
Those
but
helmets aren't.
unfortunately as well, it isn't tight enough around the waist. Um, you can see it goes pretty much straight down um, from under the arms, which means that the entire weight of the armor is hanging on the shoulders.
So something I will say in sort of favor of this armor very much appears to be costume, not armor.
Yeah,
So, and I've not seen House of the Dragon, so I do not know if this is true. But if these are purely ceremonial guards and actually they're terrible at fighting anyway, so why bother giving them real armor that works?
yeah,
Then, like, if that's the story that you want to tell about your Kingsguard and you put them in this, then I am all for that. Like a narrative thing, you
hmm
know, that is absolutely fine. But if these are supposed to be elite warriors who have like a job to do where they will be expected to fight, like either they're really bad at their job or they're really scared to criticize their armorer.
yeah. I mean, the question that we need to ask with all of these tier lists is: would you choose to wear this armor?
Absolutely not.
So yeah, it if you see, I don't know how we can show a video, and I don't know that we can in this instance. But if you watch them moving in it, they absolutely cannot move in it. And these armors aren't even made of steel; they're plastic ones. Um, it doesn't provide protection in the right places. It's it's obviously ceremonial, but I think it's also meant to look cool, and
Mm.
they're meant to be, feared warriors, and it just doesn't. It doesn't do it for me. Um, I don't know that I'd put it as low as Nilfgaard, just because I'm very much driven by aesthetics. Um, if you gave it a shield, I think it could move up a spot, but I think it's C or D, to be honest.
Do you know what? If it were cloth, it would go up a tier for me.
Yeah, yeah, like a Linothorax or something. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Or literally just like this is just ceremonial robes that are supposed to look like armor, but they're not.
yeah, yeah,
You can even tell me that it's magic cloth that can stop bullets that's worn as the lining inside your suit, and I would like it more.
yeah.
In fact, that should have been a fantasy armor on this tier list.
Magic cloth.
The
Yeah,
John Wick suits.
John Wick suits. Oh man, yeah, I forgot John Wick is one of the best fantasy films ever made.
Yeah.
um. Okay, what are we doing? C or D?
I mean, I think put it in C.
Yep.
Um, because it does at least provide some protection, and with the idea that if it ends up being the worst armor on the list, we shove it into D tier just for completeness.
Yep. Yep. Yes. Okay. Let's move on. What have we got now? Next is the Berserker armor from Berserk. I've not seen Berserk. Have you seen Berserk?
I've not. Is this a manga?
Yes.
Right.
It
Okay.
is.
I have no idea how to judge this, but it looks awesome.
It looks very. It's so stylized, isn't it?
Yes.
I'm not entirely sure how these pauldrons are working, to be honest. I don't like the waist. I feel like
My assumption is every single plate moves independently.
yeah, okay, yeah,
Therefore, this probably has like horrendous flexibility.
yeah,
But also, none of these plates could move independently, in which case this sucks.
yeah. I don't think this will work as an armor. I don't see how I'm looking at loads of different pictures. I have no idea how these shoulders work. These shoulders are not going to work, are they? They're not going to work. They look really cool, but they're not going to work. It looks like it's in some ways
There is
based.
pictures from a cover which has got less of the armor going on, and
Mhm.
it looks like individual plates are supposed to be articulated on leather runners.
Okay, so we're talking about um, basically a it's it's a gothic um, lorica segmentata construction.
Yeah,
um,
It's like laminated gothic armor. Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Um, I would not choose to wear this armor. I
My assumption as well is that the character who is wearing this armor is super powered in some way.
yeah, yeah.
So,
I think you're right.
given the assumption, okay, YJ has some context for us.
Hmm.
So apparently, the helmet
Sure.
changes shape to represent the wearer, which presumably means that it's magic.
Okay, magic armor. Got it. Okay.
This is new. I kind of want to go read this series now.
Okay. Um, right. The shoulders would not work in
No, no,
the way that I've seen.
unless you are super powered and this armor is magical.
Yeah. Um, the legs look like they would work for the most part, except for they've done that weird. Um, putting a plate exactly on the part where it's meant to bend. Like,
Yeah.
there are so many segments to this armor. Why put a plate right at the ankle or the front of the ankle? Like, you're doing so many segmented bits. Make that bit
Yeah.
segmented and it will work. But yeah, basically, no, they haven't. They've stopped. So they've stopped the ankle working. They stopped the shoulder from working. The thigh plates surprisingly will work, um, and are very similar to late Gothic armor. I think they probably go up a bit too high on the inside, but um, you know, we'll allow it. The codpiece is would work, yeah, probably. The torso would, the arms would, yeah. So as long as you can get away and fight um, without moving your ankles and without moving your shoulders, you
Mm.
should be fine. Yeah.
Apparently, the armor gives them it gives the wearer superhuman strength. So I think we're definitely in the category of it uses magic to work.
Okay. All right.
So
Um,
given that it's magic, I
given
think
that
it's
it's magic armor,
yeah, yeah,
you would take it. Okay.
yeah, yeah,
Um, all right. Well, that's kind of a bit of a get out of free jail free card, and we could say that about any of the armors. I'm not taking this armor
yeah. It's
because if the
not.
magic,
This armor is not worse than that Kingsguard armor. I'm sorry, like that is not.
there we
Yeah,
go.
yeah,
It can
yeah,
go
yeah.
slightly above the Kingsguard armor. I don't know because the Kingsguard armor you can't really move very much, but at
Yeah, but it
least you
just
can
doesn't
move your
protect you in any
ankles.
locations.
Okay,
At
this
least
does
the
protect you
Berserker
in
armor has
locations.
full
Yeah,
body coverage.
yeah. Okay, we'll allow it. Okay, maybe the Kingsguard armor does need to move down. If if we're basically saying we wouldn't take the Kingsguard armor without it being having significant changes made,
Hmm.
then
Hmm.
yeah. Okay. Um, right. So you've got something new on the reading list.
Yeah.
I'm showing my prejudice against fluted Gothic style armor. Um, so Lord Berger of Friesland says uh, they said Weta Workshop also works on gear from Narnia, which looks great. So I've chosen the Peter Pevensey armor from the Narnia films, and yeah, I think it's in both of them.
Mm.
He wears it in the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and Prince Caspian, and
Hmm.
then he's not in Voyage of the Dawn Treader, is he? So yeah.
No.
One of the interesting things about this armor is that because it was designed for a child actor, they and specifically the actor who was Peter, they knew that because of his age, he was very likely to have growth spurts during the filming. They had to design an armor which allowed for that, which
Yeah.
I think is really interesting, and an interesting uh, problem to have to be able to solve. Um, and that's, I think, one of the main reasons why they went for male as the main
Yeah.
torso protection, um, because they really basically had no idea like how
What's
big
likely to turn
he
up
was
as?
going to get. Yeah, how
Okay.
much he would grow up from the point that they measured him to the point where he was actually going to be needing to wear it. So it didn't matter so much if his arms got a little bit longer because they didn't use articulated elbows and they didn't use articulated knees. Uh, but yeah, that was the choice that they made. I
So
think it's a really nice armor.
yeah, I
Um,
have so many thoughts about this armor.
okay, go on.
Um, so I really like it. I think it is a weird styles clash of like late articulated and early male. But
Yeah,
there are reasons for that. It does commit like the thing that I don't often like, which is a metal shield, like a metal
Yes.
heater shield. They just look a little bit rubbish to me.
Yeah.
Um, but this armor also has two of my favorite moments of any armor in any movie, which is one where he takes his helmet off and immediately gets punched in the face.
Yep. That was good.
And the second one is when he parries with his van brace and actually actively uses his armor as armor rather than just as a shock absorber, basically, something to soak damage, which
Yeah.
I really enjoyed both of those things in Prince Caspian.
He also used, he's got the it's kind of like an English style gauntlet that
Yes,
kind of juts out over the thing, and he uses that as a knuckle duster,
yes,
which was also awesome.
yes,
Uh,
yes. I genuinely, whoever it was that did the fight choreography in Prince Caspian, I think was an excellent
yeah,
choreographer and deserves a lot of credit. Got an
yeah,
awful lot out of those scenes. Um, I'm not a massive fan of the kind of the greave design that he's got
the
going
greaves
on.
are really chunky.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
they look kind of like welly boots,
yeah,
um, which is not my favorite thing. Um, but I also really enjoy the juxtaposition of his armor compared to Caspian's armor, and the idea
yeah,
that they're like 400 years separated or something, and like the differences that you can see there. But you can see how Caspian's armor could have evolved out of elements of Peter's armor.
yeah. That's a good point. Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I think from a stylistic point of view, those are the areas that they started armoring first of all when they were transitioning from mail to plate. Right. It's just the fact that the pauldrons are so advanced
yes,
compared to the rest of it, and you and the helmet is very sallet like,
it
which
definitely has that fantasy Saleh feel.
to our mind is probably like provoking thoughts that the average moviegoer won't, right?
Oh yeah, yeah,
So
absolutely.
we're looking at that. We're thinking that. I don't know. I think this armor would probably, to my mind, have been improved if the pauldrons were less developed. Like,
Yeah.
you could have gone with a much simpler pauldron, but still had it look really cool. I know that Lewis, um, a lot of his writing is imagining the early medieval period. So having that, um, but then also this is meant to be the golden age of Narnia as well. So you're
Yes.
meant to like be looking at it and going, "Oh wow, this armor is incredible." Um, yeah, I really like it. I would wear this armor. I wouldn't choose it over um, the A tier armors
No, I think
because
it's a solid B. A solid B.
yeah,
I think with a like a nasal helm and, as you say, less advanced pauldrons,
hmm
I think this could be an A tier armor.
yeah, yeah, or one of the Anglo-Saxon,
Mm,
uh,
yes.
you know
Yeah.
that
Also,
that
it's not strictly part of the armor, but I do just want to call out the sword design is
yeah,
really nice.
yes,
It's got that like rigid, very triangular section that makes it look like it's designed to deal with the arm. It it works with the armor he's wearing because it looks like it's designed to deal with people who are wearing the same kind of armor he is.
yes, and it looks like it's meant to be used um, with a heater shield, but
Yes.
that can be used without as well. It's um, it's ornate enough to look like it could be wielded by a high king,
Hmm.
but not so ornate that people start going, "Hang on a second, no one would actually use that."
I
Yeah,
really
I
need
think
to did the armoring on this film.
the armoring on those films. was really, really good. I mean, if you get Weta Workshop to do any armoring, then you know it's going to be good. But I think what's really great about the Narnia films is that everything that they learned on Lord of the Rings, they
Yes.
put into the Narnia films, right? It was the same people, but all of the mistakes that they'd made, the stuff that they'd learned, they put it into the Narnia films. And thank you so much to the director who had the sense to give him a helmet with a full face visor,
Yeah.
because no one, and this is an example that we should show every director in Hollywood, because no one is looking at that, and when he puts his visor down, no one goes, "Oh, where did Peter go?"
Yep.
Everyone knows who he is because the costume designer has done their job, and you don't need to see an actor's face to know that it's that character.
Yep.
So, thank you for doing that, and may that be a lesson to everyone else. Um, yeah, sorry, got a little bit on a high horse. Are we doing? We're going B tier for that, aren't we? Yeah.
Yeah, I think Beta is solid. Sorry, I'm being distracted by trying to find out who did the fight choreography in that film.
Okay. Worth finding out. It's very, very good. The I the yeah, those, especially the first two Narnia films, I think, bearing
Mm,
in mind the main cast were all children, they were incredible.
yeah,
Like, yeah, really good characterization, especially in the second one. Um,
that is very true, YJ. Very, very true.
what did YJ say?
That the target audience for movie going has object permanence.
Yeah,
Not permanent,
uh,
sorry.
yeah,
Yes.
yep. Okay, so what's the last one I've got here? It's Mordred. Who was it who asked for Mordred? Uh, Griffin said there are a number of armors in Excalibur, but I would be interested in your view on the Mordred armor. So, a little bit of story time. Quite a while ago now, I say a few years ago, it must be at least 10 years ago
Hmm.
now. Every summer, I would go and work at Tintagel Castle for English Heritage with a friend of mine called Will, and we would do a week being um, Victorian or Edwardian archaeologists doing workshops for the kids that came to the castle. And in the evenings, we would watch um, King Arthur films. And I say that because I really enjoyed that. And that was the first and only time I've watched Excalibur. um, there's a lot of weird stuff in Excalibur. A lot of weird stuff. Um, and it's probably stuff that we don't need to get into now. But the armor is widely held up by many, many armor enthusiasts as the reason why they got into armor. So that's all to say. Nick, are you aware of this armor?
I am aware of this armor, yes, because I too watched Excalibur many, many years ago. But I am going and finding some pictures so that I can see exactly what we're working with here.
Yeah. So this armor, I think, was made by Terry English, like the other armors
Mm-hmm.
from the film, made out of aluminium. Again, like the other armors from the film.
This film must have been so uncomfortable to ride in.
Yeah. So we've got quite a long, muscled cuirass. So Maybe if someone who knows a bit more about antiquities armor could say, I think that generally the muscled cuirasses weren't as long as this, but even if they were, generally the people that were wearing them might not be actually riding horses into battle.
Yeah.
I might be wrong about that, but certainly it seems to me that the ancient muscled cuirasses are shorter. When it comes to the 16th century, there are a couple of examples of muscled cuirasses being used in the 16th century. They are they have some kind of articulation, but I'm not actually sure how effective the articulation was. But
Mm.
then we're also not especially sure whether they were actually used in combat or not.
Mm. I approve of the arm design, or the sort of cooters down, although the random spikes, I feel like I would get annoyed with them whilst wearing this armor. I'm
Yeah.
not entirely sure how those shoulders work,
No. Yeah.
but it
I
also looks like there's a couple of different variations on the shoulder from the movie.
Yeah, I think he made a few because it's worn from when he's quite young, and then there's an older actor who plays him as well, isn't there?
Mm.
Yeah.
Or it kind of it looks like actually what they did was that they opened up the pauldron slightly, so they didn't sit
Okay.
as smoothly against the cuirass to allow for that extra movement forward. Um,
Yeah.
which makes sense. The the legs here, looking at some of the other pictures, look pretty decent actually, like pretty spot on. Not quite
Yeah.
sure about the around the ankles for those Polines, but
Mm.
not too bad. I don't think this armor is you know any worse than the Caspian armor. Oh, sorry, the Peter armor from Chronicles of Narnia.
Yeah. I think the spikes are a problem for me because they're too
They are.
big. Um, I think the scales are too big as well. That was
Hmm.
probably a time thing. I could imagine this armor with smaller scales because it would look a lot better because it's going for a really kind of rich look to it, isn't it?
Mm.
But it does also look a bit budget costume.
Yes, it does have a gold paint feel, doesn't it?
Yeah, because it was made of aluminium and then I guess just sprayed gold, right?
Sprayed with gold paint, probably.
And I
But
would imagine, like, if you had the budget and you said to Ugo Serrano, for example, um, can you please make me Mordred armor as it should have been?
yes,
You would have a completely functional, absolutely awesome, epic piece of armor that would be gold plated and you would have no problems and it would be absolutely perfect. I
yeah.
think you'd be able to fight in it. It would be completely protective in all the ways that you want a late 15th century plate armor to be.
Well, it's got that early 16th century vibe as well, with like the grotesque helm,
Yes. Yeah. Mm.
um, which
I
is I don't want to like hard criticize the armor for that helmet, because I completely understand what they're trying to do there
Yeah.
and the vibe that they're trying to go for. It doesn't come off, I think, in the right way, and I think that's to do with the overall finish on the armor. I think if this armor was in black and steel,
Yeah.
I think it would look way less tacky.
Yeah. Yeah. Or you could go black and gold like the Toby. Like
Yeah,
if you made this in black and steel with smaller spikes, and if the knuckle plates, the polanes, the cooters, and the scale,
and the
and
hair.
possible and the hair, yeah. If that was all gold,
Yeah,
this would be an incredible armor.
yeah.
And if it was made by Ugo Serrano,
Also
if
that, yeah,
anyone has all the money in the world, please do this.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
And,
not because
and
like
that's not a knock at Terry, because Terry did a fantastic job with this, particularly given this film was made in 1981,
he
or
made
released in
all
81,
of the
probably
armors.
made in like 79.
How many armors did he make? I don't even know. There were so many. He
Yeah,
made them all. And in many ways, a lot of the armors, although not accurate, are better made than a lot of armors nowadays that people wear.
yes.
Um, yeah. So it's hard. Are we rating this armor, or are we rating what this armor represents and or could be? Because I think when it comes down to it, the the Nilfgaardian armor, as in the veiny armor, the Kingsguard armor, all of the armors that we've talked about here have got that we have issues with have got issues of design.
Mm.
The Mordred armor, I think, only has issues of execution. Like if Weta Workshop was given the sketches, the workshop right now was given the same sketches, they would make an armor that I think would be S tier.
I think if you just like if you gave Terry those
Yeah,
sketches
probably.
today and asked him to
Yeah,
do it again, right? Like,
yeah, yeah,
um, I would be happy putting this armor in high B tier.
yeah. I'd do that with it, with the assumption that, like, if the guy who made the pauldrons on Peter's armor
Yeah,
made this armor, right?
yeah,
This armor is the one you'd choose.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um.
I'm also I'm looking at some of Terry English's recent work,
Yeah.
and you know, I don't know what he made on these particular films without going into too much detail, but I think, you know, it's a product of its time, not of its producer.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. And the guys that were making you know, Terry English was responsible for inspiring the guys that made all of the other armors, right?
Yeah.
If you if you were to like speak to anyone who made the stuff on Lord of the Rings or Narnia or Game of Thrones, like they wouldn't be doing what they're doing without what Terry English did.
Mm.
Yeah. Okay. That's all of the armors, but I'm gonna ask one more question before we finish for the night. And
Mhm.
chat, you can also um, jump in on this. Frederick has just joined us. We've got a few more people have joined us just at the end. We have been we've been tier listing this. We've ended up with nothing in S tier, but 3 armors in A tier. So here's my question to all of you and to Nick. Which of the 3 armors that we've got in A tier, that's Theoden's armor, or the Last Alliance Elves armor, or the Nick, can you pronounce it?
The Githyanki.
Githyanki half plate. which of those three would you choose? Like if I had them all here and was going to give you one of them to go and fight in, which one would you choose?
Ooh.
Yes, Frederick. This is the last. This is it. This is the end. This is the last bit. But don't worry, you can always watch back later and leave a comment if you think that we're incredibly wrong in anything, or if you want to agree with us, violently agree. What are we choosing, guys? I'm surprising
I
myself
think
because I don't think it's the Theoden armor. I don't think it.
I don't
I
think
don't
it's the
think it's
Theoden
Theoden.
armor either. I think it might be the Githyanki armor.
Yep,
And
I'm
partly I think
tempted.
that's because it suits how I fight,
Hmm.
as well as, you know,
Yeah,
everything.
yeah. I think for me, it's probably going to be the Elven armor
That's fair.
because um, I do like the Githyanki stuff. It's just a little bit too fancy for me.
Hmm.
I don't like, yeah, it the jewels and things like that is a bit too far, bit too far. Although I would go for either no cape or a shorter cape, personally, when it comes to
Yeah,
actually
yeah, yeah.
fighting. The
Or
the long,
wear the cloak for traveling in, and then just take it off.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. You don't need it in battle. Um, the long skirt, or the ankle length skirt, I wouldn't have a problem with. I think a lot of people have been fine fighting in that sort of thing, especially when it comes to the ordered ranks fighting that we see the elves do in Lord of the Rings.
Hmm.
But the big cloak. Frederick says that they would go for Theoden armor, but in law, probably the elven armor because of the craftsmanship and skill. Yeah, I mean, the elven armor is probably better than Theoden's armor, right? Because we're talking second age Noldorian elves.
Yeah.
So, like, probably a little bit better than what a bunch of farmers that like horses can can make. Um, which is not really something we really talked about. Um, but maybe that's a topic for another day because we are now reaching the end of our time together. Nick, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you for
Um,
putting that together. I enjoyed discussing fantasy armor with you.
yeah, it was good. I think maybe there are some more armors that we should do at another point. I think I'm already thinking of more. So if you want us to do another one of these and you want us to cover a particular armor, then do leave a comment in the description down below. Um,
I was
there's,
I was
there's a-
thinking
yeah.
manuscript armors.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Medieval fantasy armors. Like,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
that could be cool. Okay, maybe that's one for the future. Um, yeah. Don't forget, guys, to like, share, and subscribe. Commenting is really helpful. I do read all of the comments, and YouTube has got this really weird thing where if I reply to them or react to them, it hides them from me for future. So if anyone's leaving,
Bizarre.
yeah, I have to go into to like the settings and say no, show me all of them, please, which is
Yeah.
really frustrating. So I've actually stopped clicking the heart quite so much because sometimes I'm like, no, I want to still see that to remind me what I need to do.
Hmm.
Anyway, YouTube is weird, the internet is weird. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next month